I'm Margaret Foster. I raised my son alone, gave him my youth, my house, and every last dollar I had. He never visited me in the nursing home until he wanted $300,000. I said yes. But before the day came, I reminded him exactly who made him. For 2 years, I sat in that room 114 at Oak Ridge Haven, waiting. Not every day, not every hour, but in the soft, aching silence of the evenings. You know the kind, when the sun dips low behind stained glass windows and the hallway smells like reheated soup and antiseptic. I waited for my son. Not a birthday call, not a Christmas card, not even a, "How are you doing, Mom?" on a bored Tuesday afternoon. They say when you age, you get used to being forgotten. But that's a lie. You never get used to it. You just get quieter about the hurt. His name is Lucas. My only child, my everything, once. He hadn't visited me since the day he dropped me off like old luggage and promised to come back next week. That was 738 days ago. I counted. What else was I supposed to do? The nurses stopped pretending after the first few months. They used to fluff my pillows extra nice, smile with too much pity, say things like, "I'm sure he'll show up soon." Now they just hand me my pills and say, "You know where the call button is." It became a routine. Breakfast, medication, water therapy, and watching the front gate through my window. Even when I pretended to nap, every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my heart jumped like it still had hope. And every time, it was someone else. Someone else's child. Someone else's family. Never mine. Until one Tuesday. He showed up without warning in a navy blazer and loafers far too polished for someone who barely had time to remember I existed. And he was smiling. Wide, fake, camera ready. Not the kind of smile you wear when you miss someone. No, it was the kind you wear when you need something. "Mom," he said, stepping into the room like it was a casual stop on his lunch break, like the air wasn't thick with 2 years of silence. I sat frozen in my chair, hands gripping the arm so tightly my knuckles popped. "Lucas," I whispered. My voice cracked. It hadn't said his name out loud in months. He leaned in, kissed my cheek like a politician, then pulled back and looked around the room like he'd just walked into a crime scene. "They've really got you tucked away here, huh?" I ignored the insult. I was too stunned to respond. I just stared at him. His hair was grayer, his eyes colder, or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. Then came the small talk, the weather, the traffic, his wife Lauren, who apparently had a migraine today. And then, the truth. He cleared his throat like he was teeing up for a speech. "Listen, Mom, I've been thinking about something important. You remember that little business idea I had a while back, right? The tech consulting firm?" I nodded slowly. I remembered. I also remembered cashing out one of my retirement funds to help him get it started 6 years ago. Money I never saw again. "Well," he continued, "we're on the verge of something big. I mean, life-changing. But we hit a small roadblock, the kind only money can fix. About $300,000 to be exact." I didn't say anything. I just watched him, every flicker in his face, every twitch of discomfort. He laughed, trying to soften the ask. "I know it sounds like a lot, but I figured, look, you still have that inheritance from Dad, right? Or maybe something left from selling the house." That's when I realized this wasn't a reunion. This wasn't a son visiting his mother. This was a predator testing the waters before the strike. I wanted to scream, to ask him where the hell he'd been when I was stuck in this place, dizzy from medication and crying in the dark over a broken hip. Where was he when the flu had me curled up for a week and the nurse said, "Should we call your emergency contact?" And I said no, because what's the point? But I didn't scream. I smiled. And I said, "Of course, Lucas. If you need the money, you'll have it." His whole body softened. His shoulders dropped. His fake charm suddenly looked like relief. He reached for my hand, held it gently, and said, "You have no idea how much this means to me." Oh, but I did. I knew exactly what it meant. And I also knew something he didn't. Before that $300,000 ever touched his greedy little fingers, I was going to do something he never expected, something he'd remember for the rest of his life. Because for once, this time, I wasn't the one being used. Before Lucas was ever old enough to spell the word sacrifice, I had already made mine. I was 24 when I found out I was pregnant. My husband, Daniel, didn't cry tears of joy or kiss my forehead. He just stared at the wall and muttered, "We can't afford this right now." And maybe we couldn't. But that baby, my baby, was the first thing that had ever felt permanent in my world. Daniel left 6 months later, said he was too young to be a father, as if parenthood was a sport you could opt out of. He moved to Oregon with a woman who wore white eyeliner and called herself free-spirited. I never heard from him again, but I had Lucas. He came into the world screaming, red-faced and furious, just like me. I held him for the first time and swore I'd never let him feel like he was too much for someone to love. I would give him everything I had, every cent, every hour, every piece of myself, and he would never feel unwanted. And that's exactly what I did. I skipped meals so he could have lunch money. I worked night shifts at the diner, then cleaned offices from midnight to 4 just to keep the lights on in our 2-bedroom apartment. When he had his first asthma attack at age 7, I ran 6 blocks in the rain to get to the clinic because I couldn't afford an ambulance. When he turned 16 and said he didn't want a party, just a laptop, I sold the diamond earrings my mother left me. He never even asked where the gift came from. I gave up my 20s, my 30s, and most of my 40s, building a life that revolved around one purpose: his future. Lucas was smart, not just the kind of smart you write on fridge magnets, but the kind that could crack puzzles, design things, think fast. He got a scholarship for computer science, and I cried harder the day he left for college than I did the day my mother died. He said, "Don't be sad, Mom. When I make it, you'll never have to work again." I believed him, even when the first few years passed with only occasional calls, even when I started working longer hours at the assisted living center and my knees ached like they were filled with gravel. I told myself, he's busy. He's trying to build something. That's a good thing. When he got married to Lauren, I only found out because I saw the photos on Facebook. His account still had me unblocked back then. No invite, not even a call. Still, I mailed a check. $5,000. My savings from the past 6 months. No note, just my name, in shaky cursive. No thank you card ever came. The first time I got seriously sick was when I was 62. A viral infection turned into pneumonia. I remember lying in the hospital bed, oxygen in my nose, thinking, if I die here, will he even know? He didn't. A nurse offered to call my emergency contact. I said, "Don't bother." That was the moment I stopped expecting anything. Not love, not a visit, not a phone call, nothing. 3 months later, I couldn't keep up with work anymore. My body was breaking down in ways I couldn't hide. My joints ached, my memory slipped, and I found myself staring into the fridge, wondering what I was looking for. When the doctor suggested assisted living, I resisted. I said, I still have some dignity left. But then I tripped in my kitchen and broke my wrist trying to catch the fall. And when I called Lucas, voice shaking, wrist throbbing, I got voicemail. I left a message, just one. "Lucas, it's Mom. I think I need help." He called back 3 days later, not to ask if I was okay, not to say he was coming, just to say, "I found a decent place that can take you." It's close to me, but I don't know how often I'll be able to visit. My work's crazy right now. He didn't come to help me move. He didn't even bring me. A man with a van showed up, said, "Are you Margaret?" and handed me a clipboard. I had never felt so disposable. And yet, I still packed with trembling hands, thinking maybe one day, after things settled, he'd show up and we'd have a proper lunch again. I even kept a little box in my drawer at Oak Ridge Haven, a box of small things I'd saved to give him. Old birthday cards he drew in crayon, the picture of him in overalls with spaghetti on his face, the poem he wrote me in 4th grade about how I was his sun and stars. I read that poem more than once, not because I was sentimental, but because I needed to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it, that there had been a time when he loved me. And then, 2 years later, he appeared, not with tears, not with guilt, but with a smile and a request for $300,000. I said yes, but not because I had forgotten everything that came before. I said yes, because sometimes the best revenge begins with a lie that sounds like mercy. Lucas came back the next day. This time he brought Lauren. She wore oversized sunglasses even though it was cloudy, and the kind of sharp perfume that felt like an intrusion in a room that usually smelled like menthol and stale blankets. She didn't say much, just sat cross-legged in the corner chair, scrolling her phone, smirking every now and then. He started with charm. "You look good, Mom. Really. Healthier than last time." Last time? There was no last time, but I let him say it, let him tell his little lies. He talked about his business, something about an app, something about tech consultations and networking platforms, a lot of buzzwords with no substance. I stopped listening halfway through. I just watched his mouth move, thinking, this is the same mouth that used to kiss my cheek and call me my hero. Now it was slick with rehearsed desperation. Then he said it again. "We're in trouble, Mom." Real trouble. He slid a folder across the tray table. Inside was a business plan, dozens of pages long, littered with made-up numbers and projections that looked more like fantasy than finance. $300,000 would cover the new rollout, marketing, back-end scaling. We already have a few investors lined up, but they want to see more skin in the game. I looked at the last page. A blank line that read, "Private contribution amount. Signature required." Lauren finally looked up. "And obviously, if the business does well, we'll make sure to pay you back, maybe even give you a stake." A stake? In a company I wasn't even worth inviting to celebrate, mourn, or exist. I looked up at my son. He had that same expression he wore when he was 12 and wanted money for a school trip he knew he couldn't afford. Only back then, his eyes were softer, honest. Now they were calculating. "Is this everything?" I asked quietly. "Is this what brought you back?" He blinked. "What?" I repeated it, slower, sharper. "Is this what it took? $300,000 for you to remember your mother was still alive?" He flinched, but barely. "Come on, Mom, that's not fair. Things have been hard." I waited for him to say anything that sounded like love, like regret, like he understood. But all I got was business plans and bullet points. Lauren chimed in again, her voice syrupy and fake. "It's not just about money, you know. We want to reconnect, to include you. Think of it as a way back in." A way back in? She said it like I was the one who'd slammed the door in their faces. I took a slow breath and reached for the folder, tapped the edge thoughtfully. "You know," I said calmly, "your father would have been better at this pitch." Lucas stiffened. "He's dead." "Yes," I said, smiling thinly, "but at least he waited until after he left me to stop pretending." His face hardened. Lauren's lips tightened. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of it settle over the room. Then I said it. "I'll do it. I'll give you the money." Their eyes lit up. Lauren sat up straighter. Lucas exhaled like he'd just escaped drowning. "But," I added, folding the folder shut, "there will be conditions." Lucas blinked. "Conditions?" I nodded. "I want everything done legally, a contract, witnesses, and the funds will be wired from a third-party holding account, not directly from me. I'll need time to get it processed." Lauren tried to speak, but Lucas interrupted, already calculating. Yeah, of course. That makes sense. You've always been cautious, smart. We'll do whatever paperwork you need." I smiled. He called me smart. That was new. He had no idea. This wasn't caution. It was war preparation. I watched them leave, practically skipping down the hallway like they'd won a prize, like I was their golden goose who had finally laid the perfect egg. They didn't know I'd already called a lawyer, already updated my will, already hired a forensic accountant. They didn't know that this time I wasn't going to let my love be used like a checkbook with a heartbeat. Lucas always thought I was soft, that I didn't know how to play the game. But what he never understood is that women like me, we don't cry forever. Eventually, we wake up. And when we do, we remember everything. By Friday afternoon, the staff at Oak Ridge were treating me differently. Not dramatically, not all at once, but it was there. In the way Nurse Karen knocked before entering my room now. In the way the administrator, Mr. Powell, suddenly remembered my name and offered me a free upgrade to a more private suite. In the way the receptionist smiled too brightly and asked if I needed help making any important arrangements. Lucas had started talking. I could feel it. Word travels fast when the number 300,000 is involved, especially in a place where most residents have only their Social Security and dwindling pensions. A woman with that kind of money, she wasn't just someone's mother anymore. She was a walking opportunity. On Saturday, Lauren returned, alone this time. I wasn't expecting her, but I didn't flinch when she walked in. She didn't bother to sit down, just stood there with her arms folded, sunglasses perched on top of her head like a tiara she hadn't earned. "I just wanted to talk woman to woman," she began. That line, woman to woman, as if we were equals, as if we'd ever been on the same side of anything. She took a few steps forward and glanced around the room with thinly veiled disgust. "I know you probably think I'm some kind of villain," she said, "but you have to understand. Lucas has been under a lot of pressure, with the business, with life, and honestly, we didn't think you'd still have this kind of money." I said nothing, just looked at her. Not angry, not defensive, just measured. She mistook my silence for compliance and kept talking. I mean, we figured the house was gone. The retirement money probably dried up. We didn't know there was still something left to pull from. Pull from. Not borrow, not request, not even receive. Pull from. Like I was a savings account with wrinkles. "I see," I finally said. "So this visit is just to manage expectations? Make sure the money actually comes through?" She hesitated. "No, well, yes, I just want to be clear. Lucas has plans. He's counting on this. And if for some reason the money doesn't come through, it could get very messy." My eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Messy," she nodded. "He's got debts, investors, people who believed in him. This isn't just some side project. It's real." I looked at her for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly, just softly, quietly. Like someone who's finally reading the last chapter of a very familiar book and already knows how it ends. She didn't appreciate that. "I'm serious," she snapped. "You think this place protects you? You think just because you've got some money stashed away, you're untouchable?" Her mask was slipping now. The polished exterior was cracking. "I think," I said slowly, "that you came here expecting to pressure an old woman into coughing up her life savings, and I think you're realizing I'm not as soft as you thought." She scoffed, turned to the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. "You know, for what it's worth, I used to admire you," she said without looking at me. "The way you raised him on your own, the way you worked all those years. I thought you were strong. But now, you're just sad." She left, and I sat in silence for a moment. Then I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out the small wooden box I'd kept all these years. The one with his baby photos, the poem he wrote me in grade school, the letters he sent me from camp asking me to send cookies and tell him he was brave. I looked at those memories like someone staring at an old painting, beautiful from a distance, but faded, cracked, and too far gone to restore. I laid them out on my lap one by one I folded them up and placed them in an envelope marked, "For me, not for him." I wasn't doing this to punish Lucas. I was doing it to reclaim myself. because love without boundaries isn't noble. It's self-erasure. And I was done disappearing. They all thought the money came from the sale of my house. They assumed I had squirreled away some retirement fund, maybe won a settlement, or quietly collected checks from some late-life insurance policy. They thought they were dealing with a woman too fragile to spend, too scared to say no, and too grateful to ask questions. They thought wrong. The truth was, the house had sold for less than expected. The market was cold that year, and after taxes, debts, and medical expenses, there wasn't much left. Not nearly enough to live comfortably, let alone rescue anyone's business dreams. The money Lucas wanted, the $300,000 he thought I could hand over with a tired smile and a shaky signature, came from somewhere else. Her name was Marjorie Ellison. Most people knew her as a retired opera singer, once famous on stages in Chicago, Boston, and briefly in Europe. I knew her as the woman who saw me when no one else did. I met Marjorie when I was 58, working as a live-in caregiver. After a year of odd jobs, cleaning, assisting, babysitting, I landed a position in a large stone house overlooking the bay. She was 82, elegant even in illness, and had the kind of voice that made you forget she couldn't walk anymore. She wasn't cruel or condescending. She didn't speak down to me or call me the help. She asked about my life. She remembered birthdays. She invited me to sit at her table, even when guests came. She made me feel like I had value outside of being someone's exhausted mother. One afternoon, I brought her tea, and she asked me if I liked music. I told her I used to play piano as a girl but hadn't touched a key in decades. She smiled and said, "Well, we'll change that." And she did. For 5 years, we played music, read poetry, baked cookies when she had the strength. She taught me to paint. She shared stories about life on stage, about men who adored her and critics who didn't, about the ache of applause and the silence that comes after fame. She never had children. One day, during a late spring rainstorm, she told me why. "I lost a baby when I was 20, she said, staring out the window, "and then I just never recovered. I kept performing, kept moving, but no one ever stayed." She looked at me and added, "Until you." I didn't know what she meant until 2 years later, after she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her lawyer called me in. I went to the office expecting some kind of thank you note, maybe an old painting or a piece of jewelry. What I got instead was a trust, a legally documented, ironclad trust in my name, $500,000. With a handwritten note that read, "Because no one ever loved me as gently as you did, use it to finally live the way you deserve." I cried so hard I almost threw up in the parking lot. That money didn't come from blood. It didn't come from guilt or obligation. It came from recognition, from a woman who gave me something my own son never could, validation without strings. I never told Lucas, never told anyone. I knew what money did to people. It didn't reveal who they were. It revealed how little they thought of you once they believed you had something they wanted. I invested half of it. The other half sat in a high-security account under a name Lucas didn't know. I lived modestly, paid rent at Oak Ridge on my own, ordered groceries online when the food here tasted like regret. I even donated quietly to causes Marjorie cared about. Music scholarships, elderly art programs, free piano lessons for girls who had never touched one. So when Lucas came sniffing around, acting like the $300,000 was his, like I was just holding it for him until he finally felt generous enough to stop by, I saw him clearly for the first time. He didn't come back for love. He came back for the same reason people knock on bank vaults. And that's when I decided, if he wanted to treat me like a transaction, then I would give him a lesson in terms and conditions. By Monday morning, I had already met with my lawyer, Ms. Barrett. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, efficient, and blessedly unimpressed by tears or charm. I liked her immediately. "I assume you're not gifting this money," she said, her tone brisk but not unkind. "So, what do you want?" I paused, looking out the window at the garden patch Oak Ridge tried to pass off as serene. What did I want? I wanted to rewind 30 years and hug the younger version of myself who thought motherhood was an unbreakable contract. I wanted to stop that woman from bending over backwards, clawing through exhaustion, thinking she'd eventually be thanked. But more than anything, I wanted Lucas to understand that love without respect is just manipulation in a prettier dress. So I told Ms. Barrett, draft it like a business deal, formal, clinical, no mention of family. Understood, she said, already typing. You want payback clauses, repayment schedules, transfer conditions? I nodded, all of it. And the consequences of default? I met her eyes without blinking. Total revocation, plus legal seizure of any shared marital property purchased with the funds. I want it to sting if he tries to run. She didn't even flinch. Done. By the time I returned to Oak Ridge that afternoon, the draft was in my inbox. 8 pages long, complete with legally binding repayment terms, quarterly accountability clauses, and one glorious little section titled Character and Conduct Requirements. In plain English, if Lucas so much as bad-mouthed me, neglected a phone call, or pulled another disappearing act, contract terminated. Funds frozen, deal dead. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I asked the Oak Ridge staff to reserve the small event room usually used for birthday parties and poetry readings. I told them my family wanted to have a financial planning meeting. I didn't correct them when they said, "Oh, how nice that they're finally getting involved." I just smiled. Lucas arrived first, briefcase in hand like he was walking into a corporate boardroom. Lauren came in 10 minutes late, dressed like she was attending a brunch no one invited her to. They looked at the setup. 3 chairs, a pitcher of water, a neat stack of documents, and instantly relaxed. They thought this was going to be easy. Lucas reached across the table and patted my hand. "Thanks again, Mom. Really. This is going to change everything." I didn't return the gesture. Instead, I passed him the folder. "Read it." He laughed like I'd made a cute joke. "You're serious?" Lauren leaned in. "Wait, this is legal?" "Very legal," I said evenly. "Nothing will be transferred until every term is met." Lucas opened the folder and began scanning. At first, he nodded. A smirk tugged at his lips, then his brows furrowed. Lauren started reading over his shoulder. Their expressions shifted slowly, minute by minute, from amused to confused to insulted. "What the hell is this?" Lucas asked finally. "That," I said, "is the contract. If you want the money, you sign it." He jabbed a finger at the clause that read, "Beneficiary must maintain weekly contact and demonstrate consistent presence in the life of the grantor." "You're going to force me to call you every week? What is this, blackmail?" "No," I said calmly. "It's parenting. Retroactively billed." Lauren flipped the page. "Wait, this part here. If we're late on repayment even once, you get partial ownership of our business?" "Correct," I said. Lucas slammed the folder shut. "You're punishing me." "No," I said softly. "I'm protecting myself, something I should have done years ago." "But you said," he stammered, "you said you'd help." "I am helping, just not blindly." He stood abruptly. "You're unbelievable. After everything I've done—" "What exactly have you done, Lucas?" I asked. Silence. He couldn't even lie. Not anymore. Lauren tried once more. "Look, Margaret, this is excessive. It feels like you're trying to control us." I tilted my head slightly. "Interesting. Because for years, your idea of control was me funding your lifestyle while sitting quietly in a box, waiting to die." Neither of them said a word. I slid a pen across the table. "You don't have to sign. You can walk away. But you won't get a cent without it. And if you try to guilt me again, I'll call my lawyer and initiate a full inheritance block on both of you." Lauren's face twisted with something sharp, something that couldn't decide if it was rage or fear. Lucas stared at the pen like it might bite him. "Take your time," I said. "But know this, every day you delay, I review the terms, and I'm not getting more generous with age." Then I stood up, collected the untouched water pitcher, and walked out. Let them stew. Let them feel what it was like to want something from someone who no longer needed them. For 30 years, they had held the power. Now, I held the pen, 2 days passed. No calls, no visits, not a word. I didn't expect them to sign the contract immediately, but I did expect some sort of reaction, a rebuttal, a negotiation, an apology wrapped in manipulation. Instead, I got silence, which, in a strange way, was louder than anything else. But on the third day, I got my answer. It started with whispers at the nurses' station. Then came the sudden tight smiles from staff, the sympathetic looks, the small, polite glances that felt like pity, cloaked in customer service. Something was off. Then Karen, my favorite nurse, came into my room with furrowed brows and a clipboard in hand. "I just wanted to check in, Margaret," she said. "Everything okay?" I tilted my head. Why wouldn't it be? "Well, someone called earlier, said you might be struggling with confusion, that maybe your recent decisions weren't being made with full clarity." I blinked. "Who called?" She hesitated. "They didn't give a name. Just said they were family." My lips thinned. Did they by any chance suggest I be evaluated for cognitive decline? Karen paused again. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I nodded. "You don't have to be, but thank you." She left and I sat in silence, hands folded in my lap, pulse steady, but burning. Lucas and Lauren were playing a dangerous game now. They'd realized they couldn't pressure me with charm or guilt, so they'd decided to go low, to discredit me, to make people question whether I was mentally sound enough to handle my own affairs. It was smart, ugly, but smart. If I'd been even a little less alert, less prepared, they might have succeeded. One medical note, one false report, and I could have found myself facing court-appointed guardianship, and they'd get access to everything, everything. But here's the thing they forgot. I'd spent my entire life taking care of people who underestimated me. When Marjorie passed and left me that inheritance, her lawyer advised me to set up multiple protections: layered trusts, medical directives, digital backups, and a durable power of attorney assigned to a neutral third party. I had gone through all the drills. I'd filed the documents, notarized the backups, even set up alerts on my accounts for any unauthorized inquiries. So no, I wasn't scared, I was furious. And more than that, I was ready. That evening, I wrote a short email to Ms. Barrett with the subject line, "Change of strategy." Inside, I wrote, "Begin initiating the revocation clause. Cancel the disbursement approval window and prepare a cease and desist letter addressed to Lucas F. and Lauren F. Their attempt to defame my mental capacity qualifies as targeted abuse. I'm no longer interested in negotiation." The next morning before sunrise, I received confirmation from her assistant that the documents had been processed. By noon, Lauren called. Her voice was calm at first, too calm. "Margaret," she said, "we need to talk." "No, I replied. "You need to listen." She scoffed. "You're seriously cutting him off? After all he's done for you?" I almost laughed. "Tell me," I said, "what exactly has he done?" There was a pause, a long one. Then the bite. "He gave you a reason to live." It was so absurd I felt my throat tighten, not from sadness, from the sting of disbelief. "That's your argument?" I asked. "That my reason for existing is to financially enable your failures?" She snapped. "You think you're so smart, Margaret? You think hoarding money in your little nursing home room makes you powerful? You're still alone. You'll always be alone." There it was, the mask finally gone. You want to punish Lucas because you're bitter, because your husband left, because you never made anything of yourself beyond changing diapers and washing floors. I smiled. I'd rather wash floors with dignity than beg for money with a fake smile and a poisoned tongue. She hung up. 10 minutes later, Lucas called. He didn't yell. He didn't insult. He just said, "You'll regret this." And I said, "Not half as much as you're about to." Then I blocked his number. That night, I sat by my window, staring out at the parking lot of Oak Ridge Haven, watching as cars came and went, and I made a quiet vow to myself: no one gets to rewrite my story, not the son I raised, not the woman he married, not the system they tried to game. I was done begging to be seen. From now on, I would be heard. On my terms. I'd spent my entire life being invisible. Yeah, and you think people see you when you're a mother, when you're young, holding a child in your arms, pushing strollers through crowded streets, staying up nights over fevers and math homework. But they don't. They see what you do, not who you are. And when your usefulness fades, when your hands stop working and your savings run dry, they stop looking altogether. You just become background noise in a world that only values the loud, the shiny, the successful. That's what Lucas never understood. I wasn't hurt because he used me. I was hurt because he expected me to stay quiet about it. But I wasn't going to die quietly in this place. Not anymore. So I turned to the thing they loved the most, the one place they found their voices, their validation, their pity parades, social media. Lucas had been active online for years. He had a curated image of success, an entrepreneur, a self-made man, a thought leader. His profile was full of generic inspiration quotes, startup selfies, and blurry beach shots from trips he couldn't afford without my help. But now that the money wasn't coming, his tone had shifted. He started posting cryptic messages. When family lets you down, what then? Some people only love you when you're useful. You think you know someone, then they leave you to drown. The comments poured in. Sympathy, outrage, guesses about who he was referring to. He never named me directly. He didn't have to. I was the villain in his sad little parable. So I created my own account. I didn't use my real name. I didn't need to. I called it At the Quiet Mother. No profile picture, no bio, just a single post. My son came back after 2 years of silence. Not to ask how I was doing, but to ask for $300,000. I told him yes. Then I wrote a contract he couldn't stomach. So he tried to make the world hate me. He forgot I have receipts. I posted screenshots of the contract. Not the names, not the faces, just the facts. Clause after clause, condition after condition. Nothing cruel, nothing outrageous. Just boundaries, the kind most women aren't allowed to draw without being called selfish. The post blew up. Tens of thousands of shares. Comments flooded in from people who had been there. Mothers, fathers, daughters, sons. This sounds familiar. My mom paid for my brother's college. He hasn't called in 4 years. My son only visits when rent's due. I gave my daughter everything. When I asked to stay for 1 month, she said she wasn't running a shelter. Then came the think pieces, the podcasts, the viral threads. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, who was the woman who said no? Who was the mother who finally stopped giving? The press started reaching out. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted again. This time, I wrote, "For 30 years, I gave everything to a boy I raised alone. When I got sick, he disappeared. When I got better, he came back with a pen and an ask. I said yes. Then I made sure it would cost him something more than my silence." That was when Lucas found out. I don't know how. Maybe someone sent him the posts. Maybe he saw the hashtags trending. Maybe someone in his startup circle figured it out. But one morning, a new post appeared on his profile. A shaky video. His face pale. His eyes sunken. He looked tired. Not physically, spiritually. He began with, "I just want to say, there are 2 sides to every story." The comments were already against him. "She didn't name you, man. You just outed yourself. If this is your mom, you should be ashamed. Dude, she didn't cut you off. She asked you to call her once a week." He turned off the comments an hour later. Then his wife posted a long, self-pitying caption about how family drama shouldn't be aired online, and some people weaponize victimhood to gain sympathy. No one bought it. The internet smelled truth in my silence, because I never attacked, never named names, never shouted. I just let the story sit. Because some truths don't need to be screamed, they just need to be heard. That week, Oak Ridge staff treated me like royalty. Residents stopped me in the hallway, whispering that their daughters had called, their sons had reached out. A few even cried. "You reminded me," one woman said, clutching my hand, "that it's okay to say, 'Enough.'" I didn't cry. I just nodded. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because the world had applauded me, but because I had spoken, and not a single part of me wanted to take it back. I always knew this moment would come. Maybe not like this, not in the glare of public curiosity, not beneath comment sections and hashtags, not after years of silence broken only by betrayal. But deep down, I always knew one day Lucas would come back not for love, but for answers. And so I prepared for it. I had the envelope ready, sealed, yellowed slightly with age. It held papers I never meant for him to see unless he forced me to open that door. And now he had. It was a Friday morning when the front desk rang. "Ms. Margaret, your son is here. Should I send him up?" I didn't answer for a long moment, then finally I said, "Yes." One last time. He came in looking smaller, not physically, number. His shoulders were still broad, his clothes still expensive, but something in his expression had shrunk, something that used to stand tall even when he was lying. His pride, it had finally bent. He didn't sit, just stood there near the door like he didn't want to get too close. "You made a mockery of me," he said quietly. "You knew people would figure it out." "No," I said. "You made a mockery of yourself. I just stopped covering for you." He ran a hand through his hair, restless. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "What do you even want from me?" I tilted my head. "Respect." He blinked. Not pity, not gifts, not praise, just acknowledgement that I mattered, that I wasn't a machine built to dispense money and love without limits. He looked away. "I didn't know it would hurt you that much." "You didn't care to ask." Silence stretched again. Then, like a child again, he said, "I just don't understand. You were always so giving. What changed?" And that was when I realized he still didn't get it. Not really. He thought this was about money, about pride, about internet noise. He didn't know this story started long before his first birthday. I reached into the drawer beside my chair and pulled out the envelope. "Sit," I said. He hesitated, then obeyed. I handed it to him. He opened it slowly, unfolding documents that shook in his hands. His eyes scanned quickly, then widened. He flipped to the second page, then the third. The words hit like gunshots. Adoption finalization, March 3, 1991. Biological parents unknown. Birth condition congenital heart defect. Found abandoned behind a grocery store dumpster. He looked up at me, pale. I don't understand." "You weren't born to me," I said quietly. "But the day I saw you, barely alive, crying so softly you could hardly make a sound, I chose you. I picked you up and said, 'This one. This child is mine.'" He stared, lips trembling. "I never told you because I didn't want you to feel like a mistake someone threw away. I wanted you to believe love could be unconditional. That family wasn't just blood. It was who stayed, who fought, who gave everything, even when it cost too much." Tears welled in his eyes. "You adopted me?" "I gave up everything for you," I continued. "I divorced a husband who didn't want a child that wasn't his. I worked 3 jobs. I gave you every birthday, every dollar, every last ounce of energy I had. I stayed up for nights sewing clothes for you when I couldn't afford to buy them. I ate cereal so you could have real dinner." His hands shook around the documents. "I'm sorry," he whispered. But it was too late for that kind of sorry. Because sorry, in his world, meant now that I've lost you, I want the comfort back. Not now that I understand I'll change. I saw it in his face. He was broken, but not from guilt, from loss, from the realization that the person he thought would always be there wasn't. "You lied to me," he said suddenly, voice cracking. "All these years, you let me believe I was yours." I never lied, I replied. You were mine. Every scraped knee, every report card, every fever, every late night. You were mine. I just wasn't yours. He collapsed into the chair, silent. I stood. There's no shame in being adopted, Lucas. The shame is in being handed a life you never earned and destroying it with your greed. His shoulders shook. I walked to the door and opened it. You should go. He stood slowly. So, that's it? That's the beginning. The rest of your life, you get to decide who you want to be without me carrying you. He looked at me for a long time. Then he left. No goodbye. No promise to do better. Just silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. It didn't happen overnight. Not at first. For a few days after that final conversation, everything was quiet. Lucas disappeared from the internet. His name stopped trending. The hashtags faded. Even the sympathy posts from Lauren went radio silent. I figured maybe they were regrouping, planning another performance. Or maybe, just maybe, they were finally learning how to sit in their shame without turning it into a brand. But then, the cracks began to show. It started with a leak. A voice recording surfaced on a gossip blog, a short audio clip, unmistakably Lucas's voice, cursing me out during a phone call. She thinks she's so clever, hoarding that money like she earned it. She's just an old woman with abandonment issues. She didn't even give birth to me, for God's sake. Someone had recorded him. The internet turned vicious. The top comment said it best. You don't have to be born from someone's body to owe them decency. She chose you. That was the ultimate love. And you spat in her face. From there, it unraveled quickly. His LinkedIn was flooded with comments. His company website was pulled down. Investors quietly removed their names from the About Us page. One startup forum released a short but brutal statement. We were misled about Mr. Foster's professional integrity. We are no longer in any form of partnership. I wasn't surprised. Tech people love a rising star, but they abandon a falling one faster than a drop stock. Then came the video, a shaky stream, filmed from what looked like a basement or a spare bedroom. Lucas, disheveled, red-eyed, unshaven, sitting in front of his phone like he didn't know where else to go. I messed up, he said, voice hollow. I've been trying to fix it, but there's no fixing some things. He didn't name me, but he didn't need to. He sniffled, paused. Then, she was the only person who ever really gave a damn about me, and I threw her away. He sobbed. The comments were a mix of cruelty and half-hearted support. Too little, too late. You had your chance. She gave you everything. Accountability isn't crying on camera after the damage is done. His followers plummeted. Sponsors cut ties. YouTube demonetized his channel within 48 hours. By the end of the week, I got a call from Ms. Barrett. His team reached out. He's trying to settle. Settle what? The defamation claim. He wants to avoid court. He's offering a public apology and $75,000 in damages. I didn't respond right away. I looked out my window at Oak Ridge's sad little fountain, plastic swans bobbing in algae. Decline it, I said finally. Ms. Barrett was quiet for a second. Decline the money? Yes, decline the silence. She understood, because it was never about the money. He used my name like a shield when it served him. Now he wanted to wipe it clean and call it even? Some lessons don't get paid for in cash. They get paid for in time, in distance, in absence. And Lucas hadn't even started paying yet. That week, I posted again. Just a single sentence. If you spend your whole life treating someone like a stepping stone, don't be surprised when they finally stand up and you fall. It was my last post. I deleted the account the next morning, not out of fear, but because I'd said what I needed to say. The world had seen him. Now it could forget him, just like he once forgot me. I hadn't seen the house in 6 years. Not since the day I signed the papers and handed it over to Lucas, smiling through the ache in my chest like it was just another generous gesture, Another sacrifice, another chapter in my long, endless story of giving. Back then, I told myself it was okay, that he needed it more, that I could live small, as long as he stood tall. He never once asked if I wanted my name on the deed, and I never once demanded it. Because when you love someone the way I loved Lucas, you believe in their goodness even when it doesn't exist yet. You fund it with your heart, with your future, and sometimes with your home. But 6 years later, that same house, the one they remodeled without asking, the one Lauren posted on Instagram with captions like, "Blessed with this beautiful life," was now the subject of a legal document titled Petition for Ownership Reversal, Fraudulent Conveyance Under Duress, filed by my attorney, signed by me. It wasn't just revenge, it was a return. Because while Lucas and Lauren were busy building empires on illusions, I had quietly gathered receipts, testimony, and a digital trail a mile long. Every wire transfer, every text where they admitted I paid, every bank record that proved not a single cent of that down payment had come from anyone but me. Lauren had tried to laugh it off when she first received the notice. "This house is ours," she sneered. "She gave it to us. There's nothing she can do about that." But the world was no longer on their side. The internet never forgot how they treated me, and the court doesn't care about hashtags. It cares about documents. It took 4 months, and then the letter arrived. A single page, stamped, signed, finalized. Property title reassigned to Margaret Elaine Foster, effective immediately under Section 9B of the Property Restitution Act. All occupants are to vacate within 30 days. It felt surreal to know that, for once, I hadn't given up too easily. I had fought back, quietly, carefully, and with everything I had left. 30 days later, I stood in the doorway of the house they thought would never be mine again. It was strangely silent. No fake laughter, no staged dinner parties, no designer throw pillows arranged like showroom props, just echoes. I walked room to room like I was stepping through a memory. The living room where I once set up Lucas's Lego castles, the hallway where I kept a bowl of hard candy for guests who never came, the kitchen where I burned my hands making birthday cakes he barely remembered. Lauren had left the place pristine, but cold, lifeless. It didn't feel like a home anymore, and yet it was mine. Legally, and finally, I spent 1 hour inside that day. I sat on the floor of the master bedroom, cross-legged, the way I used to when I was too tired to climb into bed. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, a deep, full inhale that reached all the way to my spine. Then I stood, locked the door, and handed the keys to my real estate agent. "List it," I said, "but you just got it back." "I know," I said, "and now it's time to let it go, on my terms." The house sold within 2 weeks. In a rising market, it fetched double what I'd paid years ago. Every cent went into a separate account marked, "For me." Only me. And for the first time in my life, it stayed there. No one asked for a share. No one demanded I co-sign. No one showed up with a smile and a hidden invoice. Just peace. The kind that doesn't come from a place, but from a line finally drawn. It's funny, isn't it? How the people who hurt you always assume you'll come back. That no matter how deep they cut, how long they leave you bleeding, you'll eventually return to their doorstep, broken, humble, and still willing to give. Lucas thought I'd come back. Even after the contract, after the smear campaign, after the truth, after the house, he still thought, deep down, that the story would bend back to him, that I'd miss being needed, that I'd miss him. But I didn't, not once. Not even when the phone rang 3 months after the sale and the voice on the other end said, "Is this Margaret Foster?" "Yes." "This is St. Vincent's Hospital in Alberta, Canada. Are you the emergency contact for Lucas Foster?" I paused. That name still had weight in my bones, but it didn't shake me. "No," I said calmly, "I'm not." I hung up. I don't know how he ended up there. I don't know who brought him across the border or what sent him into that hospital bed. Drugs, depression, maybe just the exhaustion of carrying a lie that long. I didn't need the details. The story always ends the same for people like Lucas. They burn through the love that raised them until there's nothing left but ashes and old photos they never cared to keep. I never heard from him again after that call. No apology letter, no desperate message, no final "I understand now," just silence. And this time, I didn't listen for the sound of him at the gate. I didn't stare at the phone. I didn't light a candle on his birthday or keep his old sweater in the back of the closet. I let it all go. Because grief for someone still alive is the heaviest kind, and I had carried it for long enough. Instead, I sold the villas I bought during the storm, the ones that once felt like weapons, trophies, symbols of defiance. They weren't home. They were armor, and I didn't need armor anymore. I moved to a lakeside town 2 hours west of the city. Nothing glamorous, nothing opulent, just a quiet cottage with wide windows, soft rugs, and a garden full of wisteria and roses. Some days I sit on the porch, brush paint across canvas, and hum songs I once heard Marjorie sing from the back of her throat like prayer. Some days I write letters I never send. Some days I do nothing but breathe. It took me 78 years to realize this truth. Love is not an invoice. Sacrifice is not a guarantee. And motherhood is not a lifetime contract with no expiration date. Sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do is stop giving to people who only know how to take. Sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do is stop giving to people who only know how to take. Sometimes walking away isn't the wound, it's the healing. People still ask me if I regret adopting Lucas. I used to hesitate, used to weigh the years against the outcome, the sleepless nights against the silence that followed. But now I just smile. No, I say. I don't regret saving him. I regret letting that be the reason I never saved myself. And if he ever asks again why I turned my back, I won't need to explain it. Because I didn't turn my back. I stood up and I walked away.